Colonel Jake Rourke hadn't been near the outer belt in 15 years. Retired, half metal, half scars, he lived quietly in a Martian dry dock, tinkering with old ships no one remembered, and listening to the stars, out of habit more than hope. Then the signal came. It was buried deep inside a static burst from relay station Epsilon 9, a derelict outpost long since written off as cosmic junk. One pulse, then another, then silence. It wasn't language, it wasn't noise, it was intentional. And it was on a frequency Earth hadn't used since the contact wars nearly 4 decades ago. Rourke knew better than to ignore something like that. He pulled his old recon ship, the Caliber, out of storage. It still smelled like hydraulic fluid and burnt ozone. Good, reliable, ugly, just like him. The flight to Epsilon 9 took 3 days. No escort, no authorization, just him, his memories, and a plasma pistol that hadn't fired in 20 years. The station drifted above Neptune's shadow, half frozen, coated in silent space dust. Rourke docked manually. No automated systems responded. The airlock was scorched, from the inside. That was the first sign something was wrong. Inside, everything was frozen in time. Coffee mugs on consoles, old boots in the corridor. Emergency lights flickered with the rhythm of a heartbeat. And then, movement. She stepped into the corridor like a ghost, wearing an outdated Space Force uniform, eyes glowing faintly green. "Hello, Jake," said Lieutenant Mia Tran. He froze. "You're dead." She smiled softly. "I was." Behind her, something emerged from the shadows. Tall, insectoid, armored in dark plates like obsidian. Its eyes shimmered with awareness, but it didn't attack. Rourke raised his pistol. Tran raised her hand. "Don't. If it wanted you dead, you'd already be floating." "What the hell is this, Mia? You've been missing 38 years." "I was recovered," she said. "By them, the Kelrath." Rourke scowled. "They were our enemies." "They still are," Mia said. "But something worse is coming. Something even they fear." In the dim light of the station's data core, Mia told him everything. A force known only as the Sire-Mind had awoken beyond the galactic rim. It wasn't an empire, it wasn't a fleet, it was a consciousness, a devourer of memory, of culture, of identity. Entire species had been erased without a shot fired. "They don't die," Mia whispered. "They forget what they were. They become nothing." The Kelrath had once warred with humanity, but fled when the Sire-Mind appeared. They followed old war signals, hoping to find survivors, hoping to find allies. Epsilon 9 had been their last chance, and it had answered. "You expect Earth to believe this?" Rourke asked, eyes narrowed. "No," Mia said. "That's why we need you." Rourke stared at her, at the alien beside her, at the broken station humming with strange energy. His finger tightened on the trigger. Then he lowered the gun. "I'll get the signal home. But if they don't believe me—" "They will," Mia said quietly. "Because if they don't, there won't be anything left to remember who they were." Earth Command didn't believe the report. Not right away. Even with Rourke's clearance. Even with the transmission logs. Even when the name Sire-Mind hit their black archives like a memory long suppressed, dismissed as myth by dusty analysts in deep vaults. But disbelief doesn't last when Mars goes dark. Not in a single explosion. Not with fire or war. It was quieter. 50 million colonists. Gone. The entire Martian neural network, memories, backups, personality cores, all erased. Not deleted, not destroyed. Emptied, like someone had reached into the collective mind of a planet and wiped it clean. No data, no records, no history, just silence. Rourke stood in the Earth Command war room, surrounded by admirals and AI observers. The old colonel looked tired, older than his years, but he spoke with steel in his voice. "You think war is fire and bullets. This isn't that. This is the forgetting. You lose without knowing you lost. That's how the Sire-Mind fights." General Ortega leaned over the table. "Then how do we fight it back?" "You don't," Rourke said. "Not alone. That's why I brought one of them." The Kelrath envoy stepped forward, 7 feet tall, armored in black carapace, his mandibles glinting with restraint. "I am Kator Ven, bonded speaker of the Kelrath memory host. Your enemy is now our extinction." A dozen security officers reached for weapons. Ortega raised a hand to stop them. "You fought us during the Europa rebellions." "And lost," Cater replied. "But we remember the strength of your kind. The Sire-Mind fears memory. Together, our pasts may yet survive." The room fell into silence. Then the order came. Prepare Earth's last line. In orbit above Luna, humanity activated the Alethea Protocol, a massive defense initiative never meant to be used. Orbital bunkers lit up. DeepMind archives initialized. Memory-hardened AIs began copying the sum of human culture. And underground, ancient code from Kelrath technology was fused with Earth's neurodata systems. Together, they built the mnemonic firewall, not to block the Sire-Mind, but to resist forgetting. Meanwhile, Rourke and Mia stood in a forgotten hangar deep beneath Nevada. The Sire-Mind had begun to broadcast. It wasn't a sound, it was doubt. Civilians reported waking up unable to recall their children's names. Engineers forgot blueprints. Scientists blanked on equations they'd known for decades. The world was fraying, not from war, but from absence. Mia clenched her jaw. Her green, glowing eyes dimmed slightly. "He's close," she whispered. Rourke nodded. "Time to go loud." On the moon, the mnemonic firewall came online. Cater stared into the data core, mandibles twitching. "This is not victory," he hissed. "This is a grave marker." "Maybe," Rourke said, strapping into a command pod. "But some graves have sharp teeth." As the Sire-Mind's first tendrils reached Earth orbit, thousands of backup beacons launched from lunar silos, encoded with the full story of mankind, from cave painting to command code, each one scattered into deep space. Just in case no one remembered. The moon went dark first, not from bombardment, not from sabotage, from forgetting. Inside lunar base Halcyon, engineers suddenly couldn't remember how to operate the defense grid. Medics forgot how to treat wounds. Even the AI caretakers froze, trapped in corrupted memory loops, repeating protocols they no longer understood. The Sire-Mind was close now. Its presence hung in orbit like invisible fog. Data rotted. Language faltered. Thoughts turned to static. Colonel Jake Rourke gripped the cold railing of Command Deck 2. Around him, chaos bloomed. "We're not holding," growled General Ortega over static-filled comms. "We're erasing." Rourke didn't argue. The lunar mnemonic firewall was cracking. Even the Kelrath tech, so ancient it once survived supernovae, was degrading. Not from impact, but from something deeper, an infection of forgetting. They had one option left, a final memory core, older than the war, buried under Tycho Crater. It wasn't a weapon. It was a witness, a relic that held the distilled cultural memory of all species the Kelrath had encountered. Kater Ven called it the Archive of Echoes. "You're saying we upload us into that?" Rourke asked, pacing the comm room. Kator nodded. "Not upload, merge. Fuse essence and event. Thought and action. Burn humanity into the archive so it can't be lost." "And what? Wait in a box while Earth gets scrubbed clean?" Mia spoke, her voice low and calm. "If the archive remembers us strong enough, it might destabilize the Sire-Mind's field. create backlash. Rourke raised an eyebrow. "You're betting that humanity is too loud to be forgotten." She looked at him. "You've met us." He cracked a dry smile. "Fair point." The defense at Halcyon collapsed within hours. Turrets spun without targets. Fighters drifted without commands. People started calling loved ones by the wrong names, and then forgot they had loved ones at all. The station AI tried to reboot. It never finished. Rourke, Mia, Cater, and a joint team of human and Kelrath soldiers descended to the archive, an obsidian temple buried in silence, humming with ancient neural light. Rourke placed his hand on the interface. A burn, a memory, his childhood, his mother's hands, Mars, war, fire, dust. It took all of it. Outside, the Sire-Mind manifested, not as a ship or being, but a field of anti-thought, a void that pressed in and suffocated identity. Soldiers froze. Systems failed. Only Mia remained upright, because she was already connected. "I can hold it," she whispered, trembling. "I've been part of it since the Epsilon 9 incident. It marked me, but I marked it back." "What are you saying?" Rourke asked. "I can guide the archive's pulse into its core, but not from here, from inside." "No," he said flatly. "I'm already half forgotten," she said, smiling. "Might as well finish strong." Mia stepped into the archive's heart. White light bloomed. Her memories, all of them, ignited the core. Childhood laughter, war screams, Rourke's voice, love, loss, duty, the endless grind of choosing to remember even when it hurt. And the archive screamed it back into the stars. The Sire-Mind recoiled. It hadn't known defiance could be this loud. It hadn't realized that memory, kept willingly, was the one thing it could never erase. It withdrew, shaking the orbit, unraveling its field. The void receded, and Mia was gone. Rourke stood beneath the stars. "She remembered us," Cator said softly. Rourke nodded. "Then maybe we're not lost after all." His Sire-Mind was gone, not destroyed, not dead, but driven back, fractured at its core by something it had never truly understood. Human memory. Not the data, not the backups, but the stubborn, living will to remember. The Earth didn't celebrate. Not right away. Too many names were missing. Too many faces forgotten. Half of the Moon's population were just empty. Alive, breathing. But their identities, their pasts, had been eaten. Colonel Jake Rourke sat alone in the ruins of Lunar Base Halcyon, staring out at the stars, waiting for the ache of loss to fade. It didn't. Not because he remembered too much, but because he remembered her, Mia, the girl who'd lit the archive, who stepped into eternity carrying every story humanity had ever told. Weeks passed. Reconstruction began. The Kelrath remained, helping where they could. Strange friendships formed in the ashes, human stubbornness bonding with insectoid honor. Katorven returned to his people with one message etched in their ancestral code: "Do not forget the humans. They are noise in the silence. They are flame in the dark. They are memory made war." Earth Command reactivated the deep memory core on Titan, sealing the full record of the Sire-Mind war behind quantum locks and living archivists. But they also made a new entry, smaller, stranger. A story. No rank, no classified clearance, just a file labeled MIA. The girl who remembered inside it. One photo, one voice recording, and one quote from Colonel Rourke. She didn't die to win. She died so we wouldn't forget who we were trying to save. Years later, in orbit around Proxima Centauri b, a scout vessel intercepted a fragment. A signal wrapped in impossible encryption. Not language, not data, emotion. The archive of echoes had begun to pulse again, quietly, like a heartbeat. And embedded in the signal was a single voice carried across the dark. "Hey, Jake, I remember you." Colonel Rourke, old now, scarred and slower, stood alone in a Mars listening post when the signal hit Earth. He wept, and then he smiled. Because the enemy hadn't just been fear. It hadn't been invasion. It was oblivion. And Mia proved something the Sire-Mind had never anticipated. You can't unwrite a species that refuses to be forgotten. Cold Resolve wasn't the name of a mission. It became a philosophy, a legacy. And long after the stars went cold, long after the data faded, one truth remained etched into the archive itself. Humanity remembers.